request for comment.
Right, I want us to get into that studio interview on gender-based violence in conflict areas. And in studio, I'm joined by Anastasia Olembo. She is the Associate Director, Gender Equality and Social Power, Women for Women International. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you too.
Right, let's just get into that conversation on, of course, the gender-based violence, specifically focusing on conflict areas in Africa. What do you think are the main factors contributing to the prevalence of gender-based violence conflict based in conflict areas in the continent?
Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. Gender-based violence and what causes the gender-based violence, the factors that are contributing to that, it's of course conflict and war. And this war and conflict, sometimes it arises as a result of resources that are minimal resources, or some two warring functions that don't agree. For example, like the story we are just listening about Sudan, two leaders disagreeing, and then after that there is break of war. So in such a situation, women are exposed because the preventive measures or the structures that are supposed to be providing protection for these women have been broken down. For instance, look at Sudan now. There is no law and order. So everybody is running. And who is left behind? The woman.
Yes.
That woman cannot run away from our responsibilities of looking after the children, looking after the extended families. And as a result of that, because there are those broken fabrics of society, anybody who is passing can actually abuse that woman. And we have seen the organization that I work for, Women International, we work in countries where there has been war, we work in countries where there is conflict, and we find that women are marginalized, women are poor, women have been widowed, and therefore there is nobody who is protecting these women, including also their children. And so you find most of the forms of gender-based violence that occur are physical violence that will come from either an intimate partner or a relative or someone who has been forced to go and cause that conflict. The second form of violence will be sexual violence. Actually, in conflict areas, the most reported incident of violence is sexual violence. And this sexual violence, you find, when you look at the UN Women report, you will see that 1 out of 3 women have experienced gender-based violence as a result of exposure. And the majority of the perpetrators are either the spouses, or they are people who are friends of these women, or they are people who have guns, armed. They are armed with guns, and therefore they can take this person. So these are two forms of violence that we have seen in the places where we operate. Not to mean that there are no other forms of violence, because like for children, we also find girls are being forced to marry early,
right?
So that they can be protected from this violence. That's what the parents would say. The other form of violence is the cultural practices, which include female genital mutilations in communities where this is practiced. You find that is the harmful traditional practice. Is you find it increases during conflict. And then the other one is, of course, women are poor, and so with poverty, then they are forced to do some things that they would not have done if there is stability. Yeah, so basically that's what I can say in terms of what is influencing this conflict. Poverty, women have been marginalized for a very long time. And when this conflict is happening, it finds these women who are already vulnerable. And so when they are exposed to the vulnerability of conflict, in addition to the sexual and other gender-based violence forms that happen to them.
How do you think then cultural norms, or just culture generally, aggravates gender-based violence in conflict areas, especially in Africa?
Yeah, I'm actually looking at the countries where we operate, like Democratic Republic of Congo. We are in South Sudan, We are in Nigeria, and recently we were in Rwanda, but Rwanda has graduated because we have a way of looking at organizations where we work. If they are stable, then they can be independent, but they still remain our sisters. So Rwanda has just graduated to be independent, but in DRC, in Nigeria, of course, we moved in 2003 when there were these girls who were abducted, and the issues of Boko Haram are coming in. So we find that with being in such a context, the government is overwhelmed, because ideally the government of the country should be the one that is providing protection for these women and the children. But you find they are overwhelmed, like now in South Sudan, and in Nigeria.
Right.
You may find, because it's stable now in those countries, so the government is taking up their responsibilities. But other organizations like our organization, Women for Women International, come in to empower these women, identify the women who are most vulnerable and marginalized, register them in a program which takes about 1 year, so that these women, when they are empowered, they have a voice, they are confident, they understand their rights, and they are able to determine the course of their action, make decisions about their well-being and their life.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the role. What role do you think the lack of security and law enforcement in a particular area does to gender-based violence?
Oh, you see, security is very important for both women and men. And when there is no security, it means moving around, your mobility is curtailed, and more so for women. Because women, like I said, they are very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And when you look at the tradition and the culture, women are supposed to be protected by a man. And during conflict, during war, a lot of men are enrolled or they are registered in war, and some of them are able to move to other countries to make sure that they are secure, leaving behind the women. So in terms of security, when there is no security, it means these women are not secure. Number two, when they move around, of course, they are looking for firewood, they are looking for water, they are taking their children to school where the schools are operating. Then with the conflict, people have got guns. Guns are in the wrong hands. And therefore, as a result of that, it's very easy for these women to be cornered on the way, to be attacked on the way, and exposed to gender-based violence. The other thing that I wanted to say is, in all these countries, like I mentioned before, the role of the government is to make sure that these women and men are protected. But because of the conflict, sometimes you may find the government is overwhelmed. Of course, the systems are not working, the structures are not working, but we know, if I take an example of our country here, Kenya, even during elections, you see sometimes there are some areas where we say there are hot spots,
yes,
for conflict, and therefore the government makes sure that through the departments that have been given the responsibility, they make sure that they monitor. So it's the same thing even for us. We have a way of monitoring the countries. We look at gender inequality, we look at discrimination, we look at a conflict, and we look also at gender-based violence. So with those criteria, we are likely to move into a country so that we can provide services. But where we are not able to do that, for example, in Sudan, we are there, but we are using a partner. So there are those areas where we have to work with partners, and we ensure that women are not exposed to violence. We do as much as possible to make sure that we work with them, with the women, they understand their rights, but they also are the ones who should be able to take the course of their life.
How do you create that awareness in areas like that? Let's say you have partners there. Do you take them through workshops, seminars? Talk to them. How do you create that awareness?
Okay, so we have a program that we call Gendered Program. And this program is a 1-year program. It has a curriculum which runs for 1 year. And this program, we, like I said, there is a criteria assessing the situation in the community, working with the local leaders to be able to identify the women who are most vulnerable. Because of course we can say, oh, women are vulnerable, but there are those criteria you want to say the most vulnerable woman. So after we have been able to identify them, then they are registered, they are trained. We have trainers who have been taken through training of trainers using that curriculum. And we look at social empowerment and economic empowerment. Because when a woman is empowered, she's able to build her confidence, and she can create an environment that is secure for her, and her health and the well-being of her children, and those are close to her, are catered for. She also needs to learn how to save, how to earn income. And so the same program makes sure that we work with these women to train them on how to invest, how to create income through vocational training. We do market assessment so that we can understand what are some of the vocational tracks that we are able to train these women. And when they are trained, they can use them, like for example, making soap. If the market is flooded with soap, then these women cannot use that soap. They will not be able to sell the soap and generate income. So they are able then to be trained to go through something like that. But remember, there was a question about the social norms. These women, as we continue working with them, we realize that they cannot work alone, and we cannot work without changing the norms that are the harmful norms that are existing in the areas where they are. And one of the norms, of course, is violence to women. In some places it is normal. It has been normalized. And so you find women are abused by their spouses. So we have increased intimate partner violence. So we work with men to also take them through a training to build their knowledge, but also we want them to change their behavior, their practice, and be able to work together with the women and create an enabling environment where both of them are able to make decisions, they are able to look after their household, and that also extends to the community where these women and men come from. So the change is supposed to be seen within the woman, but also within the environment where she's working. After the 12 months program, there is a graduation these women go through. And we look at how then can we use these women who have gone through this rigorous training to be able to begin to bring changes in their communities. So we have a program where now we identify those women who have who have excelled better and are able to be trained further to be advocates in the community. Wow, very interesting. I think that's a very interesting way of ending it. I mean, it's all about the change and including everybody in the fight against gender-based violence. Thank you so much for that. That is Anastasia Olembo. She's the Associate Director, Gender Equality and Social Power, Women for Women International. Right, I want us to take a short commercial break here on Africa Speaks. We'll be back with more. Don't go too far.